Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the political journalist and broadcaster Theo Usherwood and the journalist and president of Murray Edwards College at Cambridge University, Dorothy Byrne. Welcome both. So let's see what is on some of those front pages. Well, Storm Isia features on the front page of the Metro. The Sun leads with the news that the Duchess of York has been diagnosed with skin cancer. That's also the main story for the Daily Express, which reports that she's in good spirits despite the new diagnosis. An image of the Duchess is also on the front page of the Telegraph, but the main story claims the Culture Secretary will announce the BBC will face more scrutiny by Ofcom to deal with perceived bias. The Times reports Rishi Sunak's principal pledge on childcare is in jeopardy because of delays in allocating funding, staff shortages and difficulties with the IT system behind the scheme. England captain Harry Kane joining the fight against mental health crisis is the Mirror's front page. And the Star claims actor Brian Blessed wrestled a gorilla. Well, a reminder that by scanning the QR code that you'll see on the screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Theo Usherwood and Dorothy Byrne. Thank you so much for being with us. OK, let's start with a story that actually broke about 2 hours ago now, I think. Let's go to the Times World, page 26. This is from the United States on the election. Ron DeSantis crashes out and backs superior Trump. Dorothy, if I can start with you, he did seem like such a strong candidate, didn't he? I mean, he was credible, governor of Florida, obviously one of the key states. He seemed to have money behind him. What happened?
Well, it's a remarkable turnaround for Donald Trump. And, of course, one of the things that happened was all the legal actions against Donald Trump, which seemed to have empowered him more and more. And as things are looking, I think as a country, we perhaps have to start preparing for another Trump presidency.
And, I mean, Theo, looking at the details now, it's a two-horse race, effectively, now, between Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. Now, she's another one that is potentially a credible candidate. I mean, she may not have a hope, but where do you think it goes?
But she was already 20 points behind Donald Trump going into this primary in New Hampshire on Tuesday. And, of course, Ron DeSantis has come out having said he'd never kissed the ring. Only last week he said Republican politicians shouldn't be endorsing Donald Trump. And then suddenly he turns around this week and with this... within the last couple of hours, and decides that actually Donald Trump is the preferred candidate, and the Republicans should now get behind the former president and give him a chance of being successful and running for a second term. I mean, it's an extraordinary turnaround. DeSantis seen as a real alternative for the Republicans only a couple of years ago, and now he's had to fall on his sword. The Times is talking about the fact that by the end of this month he was going to run out of money and run out of support from his financial backers. They're having to close down offices simply because the campaign was no longer viable, and therefore inevitably having to back Trump. And it looks like Trump is now going to win in New Hampshire and take the Republican nomination.
And what was interesting when Trump spoke briefly afterwards was how confident and energetic he was. And even although he is a very old man like Biden, Trump comes across as incredibly powerful as a presence, whereas Biden is weak. Both of them appear to have difficulties with memory and knowing what's going on in the world. But I fear that people in the United States will see Trump as their favourite.
I mean, he certainly has more vigour, and I'm not sure that people should vote for a president because of that, but he certainly has that.
I think that is inevitably the way that people feel. The problem with Biden, many people might say, are his policies, but the economy is doing much better than ours. But he just comes across as so frail. And when you think of him facing a whole campaign, how will he fare in that?
Well, of course, the Democrats went with Biden at the last presidential election because he has that connection, that blue-collar connection. I mean, Barack Obama always joked about the fact that when he was in a fix and trying to win over the Rust Belt seats, he would send Joe Biden in to try and speak to politicians representing those areas. And, of course, the hope from the Democrat point of view is that Joe Biden, despite all his frailties and the fact that his current condition, he can actually connect still with those voters that Trump would hope to win over in places like Pennsylvania to try and ensure that the Democrats win.
Because the truth is no one has emerged on the Democratic side either as potential challengers to him. And we'll leave it there because I'm sure we'll talk about it at length before November. Let's pull out two front pages now. The front page of The Sun and the front page of the Daily Express, because they focus on the same story. So here's The Sun, Fergie's new cancer battle, and that's the announcement that was made that Sarah Ferguson, who has just recently been operated at a mastectomy for breast cancer, now has found she's got malignant melanoma. And just if we can look at the Daily Express as well, Sarah Ferguson in good spirits after shock new cancer diagnosis. Dorothy, what do you make of this?
Well, of course, it's remarkable that we have 3 members of the royal family or connected to the royal family with serious medical conditions at once. Fergie, famously a big sunbather, her most notorious toe-sucking picture, she was sunbathing with red hair. But what I think is interesting about these 2 different coverages is that one in The Sun, she's all dolled up, looking beautiful, and it's the cancer battle. And many people with cancer object to that idea they're battling cancer. And I feel that The Express, where she's looking a bit more like a normal woman, is actually a more modern and sympathetic way to treat a woman with cancer. But Britain fell out of love with Fergie. And I mean, she's the main story on the 3 tabloids. I think we're falling back in love with her again.
Well, she's very much back in the royal family, isn't she, in the fold? Because she was on that walk in to church at Sandringham at Christmas, first time in 30 years, and she, of course, shares a house with her former husband, Prince Andrew, at Windsor. So she's very much back in the fold. And, I mean, it's a real blow for the royal family, what with news last week that the Princess of Wales is going to have to spend up to 2 weeks in hospital and then going to be out of action until Easter. And then, of course, the King's got an operation coming this week for an enlarged prostate. So it's a tough time for the royal family, and this is more bad news for Fergie, given, of course, she's only 6 months after her diagnosis of breast cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I just ask you, what do you make of the language used? So The Sun, for example, talking about a cancer battle.
Well, I remember back during COVID times and when the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson was in hospital with COVID and everybody talked, you can fight this, Boris, you can... And there were a lot of people who had COVID at the time thinking, hang on a moment, you don't get to decide whether you actually survive a disease like COVID. In the same way, you don't get to decide whether you survive a disease like cancer. There's so many other factors in play. And for those who don't survive, sometimes I think their relatives and loved ones can feel, hang on a moment,
it's almost like they lose.
Did I lose? Exactly.
And they're sort of to blame in some way, and I think we need to get rid of this language.
I think it had started to change, though. I mean, there's this headline, but little by little, I think, I don't know, maybe there have been some changes. Let's go now to page 2 of the Metro, a totally different story. So this is Grant Shapps saying something went wrong, but it's not incompetence. What an interesting story. Basically, 2 warships, the kind of thing that you think would happen, you know, outside the school run where everyone's left their kids. But basically, 2 warships crashed, one into the other, except it's not cars, it's these massive ships. And he says, that it's not incompetence. What is it then?
Well, it's just so symbolic of the government's current state, isn't it? And the fact that one of the ships went backwards rather than forwards. And in a number of the government's current policies, say Rwanda, you would look at them and they appear to be going backwards, not forwards. Most unfortunate for the government, I would say.
And he did make this comment on Sky News on Sunday morning with Trevor Phillips. Theo, what do you make of the story and what he said?
Well, it sounds like something that might happen in the Sainsbury's car park.
Exactly.
You get it in the wrong gear and suddenly bump into somebody you weren't meaning to. But apparently it's down to faulty wiring. And that's the reason why when it was HMS Chiddingford was put into reverse,
yes.
It actually went and hit into HMS Bangor, and it's caused quite a lot of damage to the galley and various bedrooms. And it's now out of action.
Wiring be seen as incompetence? I mean,
this is apparently what the Guardian have been.
But also, if I'm not wrong, now it means that those two warships are out of action for the foreseeable future.
At a crucial time.
Yeah, yes. And it all happened in
a Middle Eastern port. Yes.
Where, of course, we're seeing what we're seeing sort of around Yemen and attacks on the Houthis and, sort of all sorts of questions there about naval freedom. So, OK. Dorothy, Theo, we're going to have to leave it there for now. We will be looking at some more of the papers. But coming up, vicious storm batters Britain. We'll discuss that on the front of the Metro next, as the Met Office warns of disruption from Storm Isia. You're watching the press preview. With me now are the political journalist and broadcaster Theo Usherwood and the journalist and president of Murray Edwards College at Cambridge University, Dorothy Byrne. Well, thank you very much for still being with us. Let's go to what is actually a crucial story and certainly our lead story here on Sky. So, front page of the Metro. I'm not sure the headline works, but it is about Storm Isia. So, vicious storm batters Britain. And it's very interesting when you see the weather map. It's very rare that you see the whole of the United Kingdom covered by warnings. Theo, what do you make of the coverage and what we're seeing?
Well, we've already had winds of up to 90 miles an hour recorded in North Wales and flights being cancelled, trains being delayed. I'm struck by the front page picture on the front of the Metro of the sea wall down in Lyme Regis and where they're tourists maybe looking on at the sea, at the waves crashing over. If you go in, you're not coming back. You will die. And I'm always astounded. You get these pictures every time of people who seem to risk their lives perilously walking along so close to the sea.
Because freezing.
It's freezing cold, and there's no way you can be rescued from that. But of course, huge travel disruption, train stations across London and beyond, and airports as well. Again, as a result of this very heavy storm, and it's set to last for a couple of days.
We are seeing more of this kind of extreme weather, aren't we?
Yeah, who knows the specific cause of this? But yes, it seems every few weeks we're told there's some form of unprecedented weather catastrophe going on. I should say that the next storm is apparently going to be named after one of the alumni of Murray Edwards College.
Oh.
Dame Jocelyn Bell Burnell, the woman who discovered pulsars, but 2 men got the Nobel. I don't know if Jocelyn will be
pleased or not to have like a potentially terrible storm named after her. Anyway, good little bit of info there. OK, let's go now to the Metro, page 5. Very different story here, but one that is affecting a lot of people, especially around the Birmingham area in the West Midlands. Parents urged to book MMR jabs for their kids after measles cases surge. And here, basically, we've seen 216 confirmed measles cases, 103 probable cases in the West Midlands since October last year. I mean, again, Theo, there's a lot of reasons people think this might be happening.
And we go back to COVID, and of course the anti-vax movement during the latter part of the COVID pandemic. Well, actually, it started fairly early. As soon as the health ministers and officials started talking about the need to get vaccinated, and there's just been this huge surge now in this anti-vax movement, and parents obviously being put off from ensuring their children are vaccinated and receive this MMR. Measles is a deadly disease. It can easily turn from something that might seem quite innocuous into something that can kill your child. And parents aren't getting vaccinated. We've got these cases. It's very difficult to treat when it reaches a certain stage. And you have to go back to ask why this is happening. And it's ultimately because of the pandemic and the fact that we had this anti-vax movement.
It's because of Dr. Andrew Wakefield, a man I have been exposing for more than 25 years, one of the original perpetrators of the lie that MMR was dangerous. The conspiracy theory against vaccination began with the conspiracy theories against MMR, and actually it's around the other way, that because that took off, then people started to disbelieve in other vaccinations. And this is what the result is. The result is death. And I think just having... This is a failure of the medical authorities of the United Kingdom to really work out a way of getting into the minds of parents to reassure them. We need something much more sophisticated than just warnings to people and a couple of stories about somebody with measles. And I think it probably needs to start with much better education in school so that children at school are educated about the importance of vaccination.
Because the Andrew Wakefield case, that was what, early 90s, mid-90s?
I first exposed Andrew Wakefield more than 25 years ago. Yeah. He was struck off as a doctor in this country because of what he did over MMR. But sadly, he went to the United States of America, where he made even more trouble. And that anti-vax movement now has become a major international movement.
Well, parents are now being urged to book the MMR jabs, so presumably many of the ones who maybe just slipped through the net for one reason or another will vaccinate their kids. OK, totally different story. We have about a minute. And here it is, Metro, page 3. It's about a swan. Police save swan in hot fuzz-style chase. Go on, Theo.
The signet was found on the A361, just north of Devizes, down in Wiltshire. The road policing unit had to block off traffic in order to get their van in the way to catch the swan. And this is they've got a photo, I think, which was posted on Facebook, and of course quoting the 2007 film, no luck catching them swans then. Yeah. Yarp, it's just the one.
Yeah, massive as well. They've got massive wingspans, actually. Swans. Dorothy, anything to add?
It's a very funny story in one way, but again, I'm afraid it's symbolic of how rather ridiculous the police seem to have become to many people in terms of catching actual criminals, that they've managed to catch a swan, so we should be relieved.
It's in the papers. OK, Dorothy, here, we're going to have to leave it there.